Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Temecula Planning Commission for today's date of February 2nd, 2022 to order. Could we have a flag salute, please?
Yes. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Turley-Trejo. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Hagel,
Here.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Here.
Commissioner Telesio,
Here.
Vice Chair Tully Trail,
Here.
and Chairman Watts.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Do we have any public comments? Should I go ahead and read this anyhow?
We have none that are not on the agenda.
Okay, let's skip that then? No? I can skip it, okay. Thought you were shaking your head, no. Okay. We're going to pass on the public comment reading and move to a consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion of these items unless members of the Planning Commission request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action, and none of those requests have been made, so could we have a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved.
I think Mr. Hagel got in there 1st.
I'll second.
Commissioner Turley-Trejo got in there on the second. The motion is to accept this consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, I'll just let the record show. I did watch the video back. I know I missed the meeting, but video back, so I will approve.
Very good. So that's 5-0, I believe, if my math or arithmetic is good. Very good. Public hearing. Any person may submit written comments to the Planning Commission before a public hearing or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the project at the time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the project in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Commission Secretary at or prior to the public hearing. Any person dissatisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission may file an appeal of the Commission's decision. Said appeal must be filed within 15 calendar days after service of written notice of the decision. The appeal must be filed on the appropriate Community Development Department form and be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee. Item number 2 tonight is the long-range project number LR21-1017, amending Titles 9 and 17 of the Temecula Municipal Code to include entertainment licenses, further clarify the definitions of restaurants, entertainment, taverns, and bars, and provide regulation for private security operators, establishing noise standards for mixed-use developments with a residential component. I believe Mr. Eric Jones is going to have a staff report for us.
Thank you. LR 21-1017 is the project number for a new ordinance we've been working on that we're collectively calling the Entertainment License Ordinance. Throughout this presentation, you're going to hear me reference Old Town, but keep in mind that this ordinance is citywide. I'm just using Old Town as an example because it's a relevant example. Let's talk a little about why we're here. First off, the city has been receiving code enforcement complaints with several businesses, and some of these businesses that have conditional use permits, they're operating outside the confines of those permits. I've listed on the screen some of the violations we've been seeing. There are several that are related to noise, also overcrowded conditions, and that's particularly dangerous because when you're trying to get people in and out of a place, if it's overcrowded above their occupancy, that can cause a problem. We have folks that are operating longer hours than what their CUP allows. Some are even offering live entertainment without any approvals whatsoever. We've also found that some have served hard alcohol with any city or ABC approvals. And we've also seen examples of security staff not de-escalating, but rather escalating dangerous situations. Some of these businesses are even operating without any permits whatsoever. We've also seen other public safety concerns. So the community feedback and the complaints have led for us to create the Metro team. Once in operation, the Metro team continued to notice these quality of life issues. The Metro team requested additional city staff to help them out, and basically what way we responded was we provided members of fire, building and safety, as well as code enforcement, to go out with the Metro team while they're doing their inspections in the evenings. Staff also requested help from California ABC, as well as the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. However, even with these additional resources, we are still finding some operations that are continuing to violate their CUP requirements. Staff has noticed that the violators typically tend to be food establishments or restaurants that have morphed over time into a nightclub type situation. So they've come into the Planning Commission to get a CUP for maybe somebody playing guitar or something like that, and it's turned into a nightclub over time. We even caught one business, as I mentioned earlier, serving hard alcohol without any ABC licenses or city permits. And we had the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. They conducted a sweep here in Old Town, and they found significant non-compliance issues. And they're actually one of the agencies that recommended we come up with an ordinance to try to combat this. So let's go through the current process of how a business can obtain entertainment. Well, as you all well know, the business must obtain a conditional use permit for alcohol or the entertainment. The problem with the CUP is that it runs with the land. And the issue with that is it can run forever unless the applicant comes in to make a change to that CUP. These CUPs, they're run with the land. They're not tied to the owner. They're not tied to the business. They're tied to the land. And if the city needs to come in and revoke the CUP, it's a very long, arduous process. And I'll touch on that here right now. The city would have to go before the California Office of Administrative Hearings. That basically means we'd have to get a judge involved. And the matter has up to 45 days to be heard. Once that organization makes their findings, those findings have to come back to the city to be heard before the Planning Commission or the City Council. During that process, the applicant can request extensions, or even at the end of it, they can file appeals, and the cost of this process is ultimately paid by the city. This can take a minimum of a year, if not longer, to get through all of these legal hoops. So we've researched to see how are other cities handling this. We took a look at several cities. I've listed a couple here, Carlsbad and San Diego, and they're requiring an entertainment license now instead of a CUP. The beauty of the entertainment license is it does not live with the land. It can be tied to the business, it can be tied to the business owner, and it requires an annual renewal. So when a business comes in for their renewal, we get to talk to our partners in PD and code enforcement and fire and building and safety, and we get to see what their record has been over the past year before we decide whether or not we'll renew or not. The goals of this ordinance, there are several goals. First, we want to simplify the process of getting entertainment so that we can encourage more family-friendly type entertainment. We want to provide updated regulations that will improve quality of life for citizens and business owners. So in particular, businesses that are surrounded by what could be called a bad actor, this ordinance will make it to where there are clear standards for everyone to follow. We also want to be able to approve an entertainment license administratively and also revoke it administratively. And an administrative revocation we believe, will hold owners and operators more accountable because they know we're going to have a much simpler process to handle those particular situations. We also believe the ordinance will provide improved customer service because we're going to decrease the application processing time. They're no longer going to have to go through a lengthy public hearing CUP process to get entertainment. They can now go through an administrative entertainment license, which will be much faster, we believe. And then consistent regulations. If you took a look at the ordinance, you'll notice the regulations in there are very clear, they're very concise. And that's really important also for the Metro team and the other inspectors that go out there, because right now, different businesses have different CUP closing times, operating times. We're going to see here in just a little bit, the entertainment license has standard times for offering entertainment, so everybody's got the same playing field. So if approved, the ordinance would impact Title IX and Title 17. Title 17 has a lot of the definitions that we'll talk about in just a bit, as well as the use matrix, and then Title IX is where all the nuts and bolts, if you will, how to apply, how it gets appealed, things like that, those are contained in Title IX. We're going to provide an updated definition for entertainment, so it's very clear. Also clarify the definitions of what exactly a restaurant is. And then we're going to have 3 different classes of entertainment licensing that we'll see here in just a bit. So let's first go through the entertainment definition. Now, in the ordinance, it's kind of a long-winded definition. I've just put here a couple of the, or a few of the kind of the big ones. Obviously, dancing is considered entertainment. Music, offering music would be considered entertainment. And then, of course, we have to have the catch-all that any amusement or event which may be attended by members of the public, that's all going to be considered entertainment. But if you look at the definition, it's a pretty long-winded list of what we've got in there. For restaurants that want to offer beer, wine, and distilled spirits, a couple of the key points here, the alcohol has to be ancillary. And also that last bullet right there, which says that they must offer not less than 5 main courses with appropriate non-alcoholic beverages. We had to put that in there because we want to be able to address the business that comes in and says, you know, I've got prepackaged sandwiches and bags of Doritos. I'm a restaurant. No, you're not. You gotta have at least 5 main courses, at least 5. Then we have a definition here for taverns and bars, and basically it's saying they have to have the appropriate ABC license in order to be considered that. So now we'll take a look at the different entertainment classes that we have. So class 1, this is going to be your business that doesn't want to serve any alcohol, but they want to have entertainment. So the example we've been using here is think of a coffee shop that wants to have somebody playing guitar. That's what this is. Class 2, this is a business that wants to have entertainment, but also wants to have the alcohol, but no dancing. So this would be, consider a Mexican restaurant that wants to serve margaritas and have mariachis. That's what this is. And then class 3, these are the businesses that want to have the nightclub experience. This is the class 3. You're going to notice that the last sentence here says that restaurants with dancing shall be classified as a class 3. So they're automatically going to go into that category. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be operational times, entertainment times that are assigned to each of these classes. So for class 1, they're permitted to have their entertainment from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now they can continue operations after 9 p.m., just the entertainment has to stop at 9 p.m. And then you can see the different times there for class 2. And then you'll notice there that on class 3, the entertainment has to stop at 11:59. So again, they can stay open, just the entertainment, whatever it is they're offering, has to stop at 11:59. So how will an entertainment license application differ from a CUP? There's going to be a few distinct differences. First, we're going to want a much more detailed floor plan. And that includes putting in the proposed dance area, if that's what they're wanting to offer, if they're wanting to offer dancing. And we need to have that because we need to know how big that dance area is going to be so we can take a look at what's the occupancy of the building, because that impacts public safety, it impacts how many restrooms they have to have, it impacts exiting, a lot of different things. We need to know a detailed site plan that has the adjacent uses and their operating hours. We need to be able to understand who their neighbors are and how could an entertainment license impact them. We're also going to need a notarized letter from the applicant and the property owner. That way it's very clear that everybody, that we understand that the business owner as well as the property owner knows that they have to be in compliance with this ordinance. We're also going to want a detailed security plan. And one of the aspects of that has to do with the security guards. And I want to just preface this right now that the security guard portion of this ordinance will go into effect immediately for everyone if this ordinance is adopted. The security guards are now going to have to be licensed through the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. These licenses are going to have to be made available upon request to any police officer or any other official that wishes to see it. These businesses cannot hire unlicensed staff. And the security guards must wear highly visible shirt that says security and also has the name of the business they're associated with. That way, in case there's an issue, it's easy for PD to determine who belongs where. Penalties for the ordinance, it's basically a 3 strikes clause in the ordinance. Up to 3 violations, we can revoke it for a year. However, if there's a violation that is of significant life safety concern, like the first one or the second one, we can look at going to revocation at that point if warranted. So who has to abide by this ordinance? Well, businesses that are seeking entertainment that do not already have a CUP for entertainment will have to come in for this. A business with a CUP for entertainment that would like to modify that CUP will need to now be under the entertainment license. As I mentioned a moment ago, the security guard provisions, those are going to apply to everybody, regardless of their CUP status. Alcohol will still require a CUP. And we're going to have to make an amendment to the Old Town specific plan, which we'll do here very shortly in the near future, to implement this ordinance within the specific plan. So we believe that if this ordinance is approved, there's going to be there's several improvements for the community. First, the typical six-month CUP process will be eliminated for entertainment, which makes it a lot easier for a business, let's say that coffee shop that wants to have a guitar player, they can come in a much shorter review time, a lower cost to test it out for a year, see how they do with it. They don't have to go through this long-winded CUP process. Compliant businesses are going to benefit from that process streamlining as well. And the non-compliant businesses, they're going to have an opportunity to come into compliance quickly because they're going to know, since the revocation can be administrative, it's a much faster process. So it's kind of an incentive to kind of get with the program, if you will. We have conducted some outreach for this. I've listed right here the different groups we've been to. We've been to the Planning Commission Municipal Maintenance Subcommittee. We went to City Council Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee. We went to visit Temecula Valley, as well as the OTTA, and finally the Chamber of Commerce. They will have an opportunity to talk about this and basically receive the same presentation you're receiving tonight. So in conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending the City Council adopt the ordinance amending Titles 9 and 17 of the Municipal Code for the entertainment license. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. We have a member of the Metro team, Fire, and Building and Safety, if you'd like to speak with them as well. Thank you.
Very good. I'd like to welcome our first responders, representing our first responders in building and safety. So welcome tonight. Welcome to the public. I will, any questions of staff before we open the public hearing, just on Eric's presentation? We'll start down here with Mr. Ruiz, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. So I've actually got quite a few. I'll try to go through them fairly quickly here. So I understand the process better. I understand the challenge of removing a CUP, but for these people that are found in violation currently, what's the mechanism in place right now? Are there fines that they're just either not doing or just dealing with, or why is there not more teeth that we can sink in right now?
Sure. A couple of things. First off, if somebody already has a CUP in place, then we have to go through that revocation process. And again, we'll use Old Town as an example. There are several businesses that we are implementing the maximum fines that we can implement on them. And unfortunately, some of these places are just paying the fines as though it's a cost of doing business, if you will. They unfortunately will not come under this new ordinance unless they want to change to that CUP.
So, and I guess that was kind of my other point then. So the grandfathered in portion, anyone, if I understand that correctly, I know it's citywide, but even it's not going to change really the entertainment stuff that's existing in Old Town. Correct.
That was one of the first things we thought. It was, how do we make this apply to the current folks that are out there? And unfortunately, we're not able to because they already have a CUP, which is basically a land entitlement in place. So we're not able to touch it, unfortunately, unless they want to make a change to it. Or we go through that revocation process I spoke about.
Okay, and then besides the difference in hours of operation, is there a different fee level for Class 1, 2, 3?
Sure.
Or is there another difference besides just hours?
Sure. So, well, when you look in the ordinance, there are several differences. Well, let me address the fee portion first. Right now, what we're looking at is for a Class 1, we're looking at $100. For Class 2, we want to go about $250, and for Class 3, we're looking at $500. That's what we're looking at for these fees. With regard to what the different levels are in the tiers, yes, you noticed the hours there. In the ordinance, there's a section that talks about all of the general requirements that all of them have to follow, and it talks about things like how you hire your security guards, making sure your parking lot's cleared out, how you queue people. There's a whole litany of things in there that even the Class 1 has to follow. The Class 2 basically says all of those things, plus if you're a restaurant, your final call has to be a half hour before closing. And then Category 3 gives even more specific requirements for the security guards, because remember, that's kind of the nightclub vibe, if you will. So it's even more like you have to have at least 2 things like that are in there.
So on that, I know it came up in even some of the subcommittee stuff, dancing is loose. I mean, I think there's Stampede nightclub dancing, and there's dance lessons, that are very different pictures where I look at it, Grape Stompers do line dance, and I would never say that I would assume that doesn't have the same kind of issue that you might have on somewhere else. But according to this proposal, because there's dancing to music, live music, whether that's DJ or actual live, they're automatically in Class 3?
Essentially, yes, because we're trying to we realize that this is not going to be a silver bullet solution to stop the issues that we're having down here or citywide. But a business that has, let's say, a half-hour lesson before you have dancing, that's a little different than just the nightclub vibe where people are lined up at the door to pay a cover, and it's not just the dancing, it's everything that goes along with it. That's really what this ordinance is trying to target. Now, if somebody, let's say, pops a quarter in a jukebox and starts dancing, no one's going to consider that a problem. But unfortunately, everybody kind of has to unfortunately get lumped into that Class 3 section, if you will. And the folks who are good operators, this whole ordinance is an opportunity really for them to shine because they're going to be able to come in, get their renewals, no problems. It's when the bad actors, if you will, that are taking advantage of things, when they come in for their renewals, that's when we're going to be able to either not renew them or put new conditions on them or whatever the case may be.
I just wonder if something there, if it's dancing with alcohol or with, like, just something to, I'm thinking of a small business that comes in to offer dance lessons, now has to have additional security guards and different restrictions because they have dancing. It just seems like I understand it's hard to not pigeonhole everybody, but that's a very different business model in my mind than a nightclub or a dance hall type of thing.
If you don't mind, when you say dancing lessons, is this like a dance class business, or is this like a restaurant?
I don't know if they're still around, but I know there was a place here in Old Town that did like salsa lessons. You kind of came out, had dinner or something, and then they gave salsa lessons for an hour, and then you danced to salsa that night. So it was kind of I personally won't consider that in that nightclub atmosphere, but you're coming out, date night, dancing, live music. Now and that business happened to be fairly small, but according to the ordinance, then they have to have all these other additional things in order to operate. Is that a good message for that business? I understand it's trying to clean, but I look at that in something that's, like, say the Stampede or a different nightclub type of a deal. Pick another place out there, not to pick on Stampede, but as a different venue for those types of restrictions. So that's why I don't know if it's.
Well, we're certainly open to any ideas of how you define the nightclub or the Class 3. We're open to any suggestions or ideas of how to better define that. The nightclub environment, one of the unique identifiers of a nightclub is dancing, right? Yeah. So that's why it's in there. Now, how we separate that from lesser intense uses that aren't necessarily or aren't explicitly nightclubs, that's a challenge for us. Because how do you define dancing? Dancing to you and dancing to someone else, completely different things. So that is a challenge. You're hitting on something that is definitely a challenge for us. Where we've landed in the current proposal is that, yes, dancing is uniquely part of nightclub, use. It does have some bleed over effect onto some businesses that could potentially be not nightclubs. But we aren't really able at this point to find a better way to define that. What if it's dancing and alcohol? Well, that's already part of it. So Class 3 is a business, a facility that has alcohol and has dancing.
But the way and maybe I've misunderstood it, the way I've read it is if dancing is there, you're automatically in 3.
No, so Class 3, the definition is a business with an ABC license that offers any combination of beer, wine, or distilled spirits in addition to offering entertainment to patrons.
Right. So what I'm saying, if you have a business that would offer dancing with no alcohol,
then you wouldn't be a Class 3.
Well, where would you be? Because this dancing.
You'd be a Class 1. That's a business that's offering entertainment without alcohol.
Except that it does, so just to clarify, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so you'd be
but we
Class
do
2.
have, well, no, we have actually Class 1 and Class 2 both say does not include dancing. So I understand where Commissioner Ruiz is concerned.
I think where that would go is we would have that, without it actually being an entertainment facility and being true dance classes, it would then be a dance studio and it would be a personal service, which would fall into a different category altogether.
That's what I was kind of getting at. Is it like a dance studio, or are we talking about a restaurant?
I'm thinking of a
with dancing?
restaurant that says we're going to provide dance lessons, current or future, if this is citywide, that, again, because of the way I read that, dancing is automatic 3, but I'm gonna have, we have the Mexican restaurant with mariachi music, and they decide they're gonna throw some salsa lessons in. There's no alcohol, it's just I don't know, I mean,
But wouldn't alcohol be served at that restaurant if it's,
Yeah.
I mean, generally?
yeah, so maybe, I mean,
On the surface, I'd say you almost have to go that way, because if we don't, then everyone's only doing lessons. We're not a nightclub, we're a dance studio.
yeah.
I mean, I suppose one way to do it is if the alcohol is like the triggering factor, I'm sure we could come up with a way of doing it, but that won't solve the problem that you just raised in terms of, the Mexican restaurant that also offers salsa. If they also serve alcohol, it's not going to solve that problem. But if we're trying to make a distinction between dancing with alcohol and just dancing without alcohol, there could be a way to potentially rearrange this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to complicate or create a loophole, I can just picture just kind of some different things, so just.
Can I just throw something out? And
Yeah.
this is just a spitball here a little bit, but the class 1, it says, business offering ancillary entertainment to patrons. Class 1 facility does not serve any alcohol, beverages, and does not include dancing. Is it possible that we could remove the doesn't include dancing from the class 1? So that business, if
So
there is
coffee
a
shop wants to put
business
some dance lessons
and they
together.
don't
I
serve
mean,
alcohol, they could get a class 1 and they would only have the $100 fee and not the $500 fee. And all the other requirements for like security and things that come along
Yeah.
with the class 3.
I got it.
We'll
We'll
think about that,
definitely- yeah.
table it until we
Yeah.
open the
No,
public
yeah, I just
hearing,
wa-
but we'll put that note of that to come back to.
Sorry, and sorry to take up so much time, Barry. I just have 2 other
No, it's
questions here.
good.
So for the security, and I think you answered it, I was reading through, a business can have an employee still be security as long as they're properly licensed, or they have to do third-party contract for security?
As long as the employee is a properly licensed
They could-
through
they
to the state agency, then they can be hired as a security
As
guard,
a-
yes. It's got to
Okay.
have the license.
Okay, perfect. And then the only other thing, and maybe I'll see if there's other comments here, but I was torn before, and I'm still torn a little on that time, on the end time kind of a thing. And I know we're trying to accomplish certain things, but from a nightclub, entertainment, younger generation, kind of 11:59's a little on the earlier side. Does that, and maybe, maybe sheriff could, or deputy could include some stuff, but does that then say, oh, Old Town shut down, I'm jumping in my car and heading to Pachanga? I guess Old Town doesn't change a lot, but is that accomplishing what we want to or not? And maybe it's just the area that we're trying to go, I mean.
1159 is just the entertainment portion of the business. The business itself, so long as they have the approvals to stay open later, can continue on until whatever, say 1 or 2, if that's what their CUP allows for. So the 1159 is just for, say there's a band playing,
music or
or there's
whatever.
the DJ playing. It's 1159, which is midnight.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
at
midnight,
midnight,
yeah.
the entertainment portion of the night is over. That's the proposal. But the business can continue staying open.
Okay. A little torn on that, but I'll defer now for the rest of it.
First of all,
Commissioner, thank you.
Commissioner, don't worry about the time. Take as much time as you need. These are important matters, and we want to make sure all the questions are answered. So take your time and ask away. That's to be expected. Commissioner Turley-Trejo.
Yep, I have questions too. Okay, and I appreciate your questions. So I think all the CUPs that we have had come before for liquor license, we have required food, correct?
Yes.
At least in the recent past, yes. I can't say that's true, going all the way back to the beginning
Okay,
of
okay.
CUPs.
Well,
Yeah.
as long as I've been here, that's what
Right.
I remember. So when it's saying there's a definition of a tavern and a bar, is that including food? It doesn't say anything about food in that definition. So I'm just asking, I thought we didn't have bars.
Well, in the Old Town specific plan, it does allow for bars. We had to clean up the definition because it was originally nightclubs, taverns, and bars. And since we're now going to, if you look in the use matrix that's in the ordinance, the restaurant section now covers the area that would be considered nightclubs, taverns, and bars. So we had to just kind of clean up the definition a little bit. That's why it's in there like that.
Okay, so do we have just restaurants that serve liquor and have a license? Or do we have bars and taverns also that don't serve food?
We have just the restaurants. I can find it here in just a moment.
That was just confusing to me, because we
Okay.
have that definition in there. So do we have the bars and taverns, or we're just putting a definition in there?
We're lumping them in with the restaurants per the use matrix here.
Okay. Okay, well, all right, that's a little confusing
Okay.
in that. I think if it's lumped together, it should be lumped together somehow, or not put in there even, the bars and taverns, if we don't have bars and taverns.
But it's in the code as they are allowed. We do have them. They're conditionally permitted. We don't have many of them. The Beer and Wine Garden is a bar or tavern because they have no food.
Okay,
And that's an old CUP.
right.
And this commission and the previous commissions, the recent commissions have not approved anything like that.
Okay.
But there are a very few
So
bars
if someone
and
came in the
taverns.
future, though, then it's allowed.
It's just tightening up the definition of something that was already conditionally permitted. So it's not adding in something that wasn't already permitted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the definition of what
Okay.
a bar or tavern is being tightened up.
Okay,
Yeah.
And they'd still have to obtain a CUP in order to
Right.
operate as a tavern or bar.
okay, thank you. And then, so let's say somebody comes in for a CUP right now, they have to have a CUP for a liquor license, any kind of liquor license, they have to have a CUP. So if they come in for that right now, they haven't had one before, and they wanted entertainment, then they would need an entertainment license and a CUP for the liquor. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then, okay, I just had this thought. This is a question still. I'm not discussing anything. So since this is I know we're not making any thoughts yet. Okay. So what we're talking about now with this ordinance, if we would like businesses to do this, right, in the future, we're wanting this to happen, is there any incentive for those that have CUPs to request a license instead, an entertainment license instead? Not the CUP for their liquor, because that's different, but for the entertainment part of it.
So for those businesses that already have a CUP, as I was mentioning earlier, we unfortunately can't bring them under this unless they want to come in and make a change. We have heard from a few of the businesses out there that they'd like to make some changes to their CUP. So if this ordinance ultimately gets adopted, then on a case-by-case basis, we can be in a situation where we say, okay, we can possibly look at whatever changes you're thinking of doing, but your entertainment now, as a trade-off, is going to have to go under this entertainment license, and that's kind of how we can do it, kind of like a horse trade, if you will.
Right.
That's kind of how we have to approach it.
Okay.
Particularly, we don't have any formal incentives because if they have a CUP, they've got a CUP, they can operate. Then why would
Right.
they come in to get something they already have? But if we have certain operators that we're having trouble with, and they want something different, that doesn't necessarily have to do with entertainment, we can have that discussion with them and say, hey, listen, we have this other opportunity. You know, it's a way for us to work with people that are having trouble staying current with their CUP. So
Right.
there is that. It's not formal, but it is something out there.
Okay, and then, so I know they have the ordinance to go to, like if, let's say this ordinance goes through, somebody signs up and they get an entertainment license on March 1st, hypothetically, right? So March 1st, 2023, and it says in here 60 days before, they have to kind of start the process, at least that's what I understood. And then, so if we have, we've had some reports, we've had some things that have been going on, do we have specific standards to actually revocate that license? Are they specifically in the ordinance that I'm not necessarily seeing?
Sure, there's a section in the ordinance that talks about what grounds we can use to revoke
Okay.
or not renew an entertainment license. That would be worked out in conjunction with the police chief. But yeah, there is a section that talks about what standards we'd have to meet in order to revoke somebody's
Okay.
license or not renew it.
Okay,
And I would direct your attention, it's section 9.10.160 is the revocation suspension
okay,
provisions, which are on page 14 of the ordinance.
okay, I will look at that. Then I have one last question for our police representative, our Metro guy, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't know, and maybe I can't ask this, but I'm going to try.
Does it deal with any potential
No, no.
business?
It just has to do with the ordinance itself.
Okay.
So when you're looking at this ordinance, in your opinion, does this look like something that would help situations that we've had specifically in Old Town, because that's where you serve, make it a better process than the CUPs that we have now?
Yes. Most specifically, like Eric spoke about to the times, like the current CUPs are all over the place as far as when they were created, and every business or a few businesses have different closing times. So, and each CUP says something different, I feel like. So it makes it easier for us out there trying to enforce the ordinance that everyone's on a level playing field. I think the businesses would all appreciate to be on a level playing field. And like
Just the
with,
monitoring factor.
right, and with a lot of these violations that, fire, code, and us, that we're out there citing them for, this gives us the ability to have some teeth, like we spoke about earlier, and, have that ability to revoke the license rather than just have this cost of doing business thing, like where they come and pay
Right.
thousands of dollars of fines every month, and we continue to go down that same path.
And what about the security guard requirements? Does that help you guys?
Yes, definitely. We've spoken with a few businesses down there already just about, wearing some type of identifying clothing to help us when we respond to these incidents. We've been to a few places where security guards are wearing different, or, just everyday clothing like everyone else. There's nothing that identifies them, and we don't know who's who when we go in there, so it helps us. Along with them having to be licensed is huge. I think that'll take away a lot of these issues that we're having with unlicensed security guards that are creating disturbances at the bar and kind of antagonizing people, because those people hopefully will be either better trained or no longer able to be employed.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Mr. Hagel.
I've got 4 questions. 2 of them I'm going to save for the discussion, so just to be on the safe side. First is about ongoing violations of ongoing violations for those businesses that are under the CUP. So I understand that the CUP has been issued to allow them to serve alcohol at certain times in today's world. If you have somebody that has a CUP and there's constant violations of the noise ordinance or any kind of fire and safety ordinance, is it possible to go through the process to remove the CUP for those types of violations?
Yes, that would be something that, under our current code, there are provisions that allow for the revocation of a CUP, and I think Eric covered it at the beginning of his presentation about what that process looks like, which
Right,
includes
yeah,
going to the
yeah.
Office of Administrative Hearing, and then there's
Yeah.
a hearing before the Planning Commission and City Council.
Yeah, I understood what the process was, but I wasn't sure how wide of violations, could be involved in that revocation process, so.
Oh, what the actual findings are that need to be
Well,
made, or?
is violating the noise ordinance on an ongoing basis enough of a violation to remove a CUP or to
I think it's a tip, and I'd have to pull up the provisions, but if I recall
Yeah.
correctly, it has something to do with, have they violated the conditions of approval? And
Right.
and it depend, or any other ordinance or law of the city, and, noise ordinance is a law
Right.
of the city.
So it could be any other,
arguably-
yeah. So, I mean, if they had overcrowding, for instance, on a consistent basis, that violation of that code would be enough to possibly proceed with a revocation process.
I think it would depend on the case, but
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, potentially, okay. In this code, we talk about members of the public, and I was wondering if members of the public would include individuals in a private party. So you can have a violation of an entertainment agreement for a business that is just doing private parties. So I just want to make sure that this would cover them, because we use the term members of the public, and as members of the public include private parties.
Yeah, it includes anybody that violates this ordinance.
Right.
Any person or group that's in violation of the ordinance, yes.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah,
I'll
members of the public can go to a business, right? But then the business is responsible for the conduct of the operations, even if members of the public are on site.
Right,
So-
yeah. I just want to make sure that somebody can't say, oh, this is a private party, they're not members of the public, they didn't just walk in, and then it's not covered, that's.
Right, well, a lot of those of the operations are covered in the statement of operations, right? So we'll know what kind of business, and they'll state, we do private parties.
Right.
But you still have to get a license to have entertainment
Yeah.
at this facility, even though it's private parties.
Right.
Hypothetically.
Right, yeah. Okay, that's it for now, thanks.
John?
Historically, the city and before the city, there's been the same elements of disarray or peaceful gatherings, and we all pretty much know what that is in the back of our minds. But none of us are entities amongst ourselves, so this existing effort to build this ordinance, done any research outside of the city in the areas that democratically maybe the same problems or close to the same problems? It usually is that way when the staff gets together and puts something like this in part.
Yeah. Yes, that's where we got the idea to do the entertainment license. We looked at other cities. I just mentioned a couple of them during the presentation, San Diego and Carlsbad. Carlsbad has a vibrant downtown, beach kind of area. They've implemented this. San Diego's implemented this. I think Pasadena is another one that has implemented it. Those downtowns for those cities, they've evolved into what they are today, and now Old Town is evolving, and we have to kind of keep up with it. So that's why why we want to get away from the CUP, because it's not appropriate for what Old Town has evolved into. So.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple questions. So I thought I had the grandfather thing down, but I was reading, I think, when you were explaining, so just bear with me, but for one more time, someone that already has an approved CUP with entertainment and alcohol now would not need to have an entertainment license unless they had changes?
Correct.
Am I on the right track?
You're on the right track.
Okay, so all new or changes then would fall under, and we would ask them to get an entertainment license?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, and you did explain it before. Like I said, I was negligent in here reading something else.
Quite all right, no problem.
Okay. Curious on the Class 1, the time, I believe it ended at 9 p.m. all during the week, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm just curious
yes.
why that would be treated in a different fashion than the other ones. For instance, if somebody had a coffee shop and they had a guitar player that wanted to play to midnight, no alcohol involved, no dancing, would that be, we wouldn't allow that under this, is that correct?
That's correct. It would not be allowed under this if they're a Class 1.
Is there a good reason for that, or why we would treat it different, or?
Sure. Well, we're certainly open to taking a look at these times, but I will say that Part of this research, we looked at, let's take the Class 1, for example. We looked at what we would consider to be Class 1 licenses or businesses. And a lot of them ended around 9, 10, 9:30 when they closed their doors. So we thought, 9 o'clock would be a good place to start. Keep in mind also that if this thing is approved, as the months go by, if we see areas that need some tweaking, we're certainly open to coming back to this body, to city council, and making tweaks where necessary.
Good.
We're certainly open to that.
Another thing too is that I know that we're thinking Old Town because Old Town is the preeminent entertainment district, but this is citywide. So even a coffee shop that wants to play guitar, if it's in any other part of the city, till midnight is I mean, it's not that it couldn't happen. It's unusual. It would be unusual. And if they wanted to go later, say 10 o'clock, they still have the ability to come in under a Class 2, even though they're not seeking to sell alcohol, but that would give them later hours.
Okay.
So there is some flexibility there, and Eric's right. I mean, this is brand new. So if we need to adjust the hours at a later date, we certainly are open to that.
Well, and I understand that there's a need for that, whatever, but consistently, I think that we ought to be consistent dealing with, fair rules for everybody, and that's just something. But if it's not a problem, I don't see a reason to jump over a hoop to correct that at this point in time. It may come up in the future, and we could deal with that. But I did want to make sure that was understood, because I could see that happening. If we ever become a college town or something of that nature, who knows what would happen, but we may make a lot of adjustments if that's the case. Can't read my notes. Okay, I think that's it. Although you did make a reference to a jukebox, Eric, and that's going to be one of those antiquated terms that nobody knows what it is anymore, like a telephone or
I'm sorry, what did I say?
a jukebox.
I don't know why I said that.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Like I said, it'll be in there with buggy whips and newspapers and things
Hula hoops
that we
and-
used
yeah.
to know. Okay, very good.
I just have one more question.
One more question before we go to the public.
So I forgot, I wrote this down too. So I noticed in your presentation, you talked about businesses serving hard alcohol without a license. What are we doing right now as far as those businesses that don't have a CUP and are doing that?
Well, we're taking appropriate enforcement action against them. I can't speak directly to that right now, but any business that is violating their CUP, the appropriate enforcement action is underway.
Okay. And then I wanted to, on the 9 o'clock, I think in our subcommittee meeting, we talked about having family-friendly type of entertainment. So I think that kind of goes along with the 9 o'clock. So that was the reasoning that we talked about in this subcommittee meeting anyway, for 9 p.m.
Right.
Okay.
Just on my point, I think there's a niche in there that doesn't have a ability to go to a place where alcohol is served or something of that nature. And just off the top of my head, the 16 to 21-year-old crowd, they may have something that appeals to them that doesn't involve alcohol. So, I did want to ask the sergeant on enforcement. I know you can enforce business and professions and other alcohol-related laws. Are there specific ABC laws that only the ABC investigators can charge with, or can you charge also in conjunction with them? Basically concurrent.
We generally have been working with them and kind of let them do the ABC enforcement. We've kind of left that to them. They're down here pretty frequently.
Okay.
Actually, one of the ABC officers actually assigned down here used to work for me. So we have a good relationship, and
Excellent.
he helps with that.
Very good. Thank you so much for your expertise and explanations and putting up with our incessant questioning. If there are no more staff, I will now open the public hearing. Do we have a speaker? We do, and you gave it to me already. How about that? Denise, here we are right on top of things. Mr. Neal, I don't want to, Cleveland, is it?
Yes.
Welcome, Mr. Cleveland.
Thank you.
And
I signed a card, I think. My name's Neil Cleveland. My address is 28046 Del Rio Road, Temecula, California. I've been operating in town for well over 40 years. I own different properties, one of which is the Temecula Stampede. I've owned that building 30 years. I'm not the operator, I'm the landlord. My tenant has been in operation nearly 27 years under a CUP that we've operated what I would call, we're compliant, we're good operators, they're good operators. We're not off track, we follow the rules, we're rule players, and we have been, and I've been active with ownership on that. Today I had the opportunity to meet with staff, Luke and Stuart and Eric and Brandon. I had a lot of questions about this. I understand our CUP, it's in existence, and we're not going to modify it. We're not going to do that. But I'm interested in Old Town being safe, and I'm interested in people playing by the rules. And I think staff made that really important today. They really drove it home. I've been in Old Town before anything was even all the new infrastructure, and it's wonderful. But having said that, I just have a few questions about the document. I've read it thoroughly, analyzed it, and I'd like to just, a few things, and I would like to just, when the opportunity is, to offer some additional language to those few of the sections, one of which is the application process. I think it needs a little bit of work. I believe the renewal section, to me, needs a little bit of work. It doesn't really reward people that are compliant and play by the rules, and it's a little, it could potentially be punitive, and I just want to be careful that it's not, that we have due process if there's a violation. First person I want is me to know that it's going to get corrected. And I'm not adversarial. I want to work with the city, but that in violations, I just want to see that, if you've done well and you have no violations and you come a year later for a renewal, you've got leases and buildings and lenders that are loaning to these people that are doing business in Old Town. Some of them have restaurants that serve alcohol. They need to know they got a business, but they also need to know they have to operate under your guidelines. I am going to come in and ask for, on the south end of the building, which I just remodeled, that you've probably noticed, we're going to come in there with a restaurant, bar, and the restaurant's going to offer entertainment, live performances, music, concerts, and we're going to be under Class 3. We're going to ask for it. There'll probably be some dancing there. We're going to apply for the license, and I just want to make sure that I think the good operators need to be looked at too, not just the bad hombres. And I wanted to express that, and I'd like to see I want to see the development code on the tables permitted in the Old Town specific plans when those get done, Eric. And then, of course, I'd like to see Uptown too, how those tables sift out. But I'm for Old Town being a family place. In the evening, adults can enjoy it and be safe. And I believe in the good supervision and good operation and not inviting trouble. So I feel like we've been a pretty darn good club, 30 years there, or 27 years, and there's new owners that bought the Stampede that are not here tonight, but they're solid people, and they live in the community, and they have kids in school, and so there's a good side of it too. So anyway, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. I assume that the points you brought up can be addressed through your process outside of the motion?
Yeah, so we talked to Neil today, and we took copious notes, and we'll make changes as we can, and as well as the commission's changes that you provide for us tonight. And of course, this has to go to City Council too, so those will be reflected in what is presented to City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I will now close the public hearing and open it up. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So a couple of words I heard that I thought were really telling. First of all, from Mr. Cleveland, safe, having a safe Old Town, and that's really important to me. And then the other word that I heard that was said, evolving. The Old Town has evolved from what it originally started as. And so I really appreciate this ordinance and all the work that's been put together to create this ordinance to be proactive. I feel like it's proactive. That's something that I've always wanted to see for Old Town, something that's proactive, something that's preventative, and not necessarily just for Old Town. I know this is for the whole city. But that's kind of what we look at right now. And so safe and evolving, and what we can do to really keep our city safe and keep it where it's a place in Old Town that even families feel safe to go to Old Town certain times at night. And I think that would be amazing if we can do that. And I feel like this ordinance would help us in that area because entertainment has been a problem. And I think this is a good way of being proactive about that entertainment. So I would support this ordinance.
Okay. Commissioner Hagel.
Okay, these are a couple things that weren't in the presentation, but are in the 33 pages of the ordinances. First is the appeal process. Should there be violations and a revocation of the license? I noticed that the appeal goes to the OAH. Is that a requirement that it goes to the OAH for an appeal? Is that a state requirement, or is that something we're choosing to do?
That is something we are choosing to do, and I think the idea was to mirror it after the massage permit appeal process, which goes to the OAH, rather than having it be heard in the first instance by, Planning Commission or City Council.
Since, that can be a fairly lengthy process, I was wondering if that's something we could keep within the city and have it be a faster process. For instance, coming before the commission or coming before the city manager first, with then going to the commission if it's secondarily appealed or something along that lines, that it would not have to go through that longer process with the state and involve the state. And I would expect that for the violator, it would be probably end up being a much more expensive process to have to go before the state. The OAH, you might feel more obligated to have, spend a lot more money on legal counsel or whatever, but if that process could be shortened.
So, and I don't have all the historical facts, but my recollection is that the massage permit process used to go to the city council for hearing, and it became very cumbersome, and would take up a lot of the council's time.
Right, yeah.
And that was why that ordinance was amended to specifically take it out of the council and have it go directly to OAH. That way, the council didn't need to be involved in the process.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how, how many appeals we'd have here if it's equivalent to the massage ordinance, but that was why it was drafted in this manner,
Yeah.
to mirror that process.
Well, since the city manager would have the authorization to uphold the OAH, could it just go to the city manager first? So that process, again, is kept in-house. I mean, we wouldn't have to involve city council at that point. but just to shorten the process.
Get away from the city council, right? It ultimately has to go there.
I think ultimately, we would probably, if it's going to go to the city manager, we probably want to have some ability to have the city council review that decision before it ends up in court.
Right.
So,
But another issue too is and correct me if I'm wrong, please. Going to the Office of Administrative Hearings is a very formal proceeding, right?
It's not a very formal, you're saying?
It's very formal.
It is
so
very
it's
formal.
the rules of evidence and the whole thing. So it's a full-blown court hearing. So if you don't go there, you have to have that hearing somewhere. So it can
Okay.
be in front of you, or it can be in front of the city council.
Yeah.
That's instead it goes to the Office of Administrative Hearings, and then this body and the city council either agree with or do not agree with the legal proceedings that already took place.
Right.
You don't have to actually hold the legal
Okay.
proceedings.
So then, if it went to the OAH and it came to either us or city council, then it's just a much less formal process to either agree or disagree. It's not going through like a mini
second
court case.
hearing, yeah.
Okay, all right,
and
that
just-
makes more sense to me.
just to clarify, and I think maybe this is what you just said while I was reading this, but I just want to make sure it's very clear. The way the appeal procedure works is it goes to the Office of Administrative Hearing, and like Luke mentioned, I mean, that could be for massage permit appeals, that could be
Right.
several hours of of hearing. And then after that decision is made, it's reviewed by the city manager, and that's it. So under this process, it doesn't go to either planning commission or
Right,
city
yeah,
council. Okay,
yeah.
that's what was just, sorry.
Okay, yes, but a city manager is either just saying yes or no. He's not-
Correct.
He's not going through a very formal hearing.
No, reviewing only the decision.
Right.
So the actual ruling, that opinion is presented to the city manager.
Okay.
And he or she says yes or no.
All right, that's good, thank you. Next question is, there's a procedure that was described for security to check patrons of an establishment before they go in, so in Class 3. I don't know if there is a detailed procedure that we require them to take the person through, or it's just that we mention that there's a procedure. But I was wondering if checking for a weapon would be a procedure, part of that procedure, and if a weapon was found on an individual trying to get into a nightclub, say, a Class 3 establishment, what would the procedure be to deal with that weapon?
Well, I think regardless of this ordinance, I think that the police probably have something to say about that, probably have a procedure of their own.
Okay. Well, we have a pretty good relationship with the business owners down there, as is now. They all know, and I'm pretty well aware of the way that they currently screen people. A lot of them use like wands, some people pat them down. But my direction to them, if they locate a weapon, they all have my phone number directly to contact me, so I can send my cell. I can go down there, one of my guys.
Okay.
And from there, obviously, that person will be detained, make everything safe, and figure out if it's, lawfully possessed or unlawfully possessed. But regardless, I don't think any firearms will make it in or should make it into any of the nightclubs here in Old Town.
So as part of the screening process, then, the Class 3s do have wands. I mean, they do have ways to determine whether there's a weapon or not, then?
Yes.
Okay. Would all the security guards have either your phone number or one of your men's phone numbers, one of your staff's phone numbers, so that they don't have to go through 911, so that, since your group is there,
Right.
You can get a much quicker response than going through 911?
Right, yes, that's my direction to them now. I pass out my business card to them. I don't think every security guard has my phone number. However, the head of security at each business or business owner who's there on a nightly basis has my contact information, and I receive calls pretty much nightly or text messages to get them a more immediate response like you're talking about.
So I would assume that the fact that all security will be licensed and be easily identified and known who they are, it'd be easier for your team to get to know who they are, to be able to get a number to them and create communication a lot faster than perhaps in the cases of some people who may fill in for a security guard who's, a chef or something like that, or a waiter or something along that lines who is taking your place and have no idea who you guys are.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're working that now currently is to really get to know some more of the security at these establishments. Like I said, we know the head of security and majority of the people we see on a regular basis. However, it is our plan to try and facilitate like a meeting where we can meet with the head of security of all these nightclubs in just one central location and kind of go over everyone's security plan or kind of how they screen people. So we have an idea of how it's done in each business and kind of give them ideas on how to make it better, possibly. And in that same meeting, get to know them and spread our contact information.
Okay, so my last question is for fire. So you're doing an inspection in the evening, say, of an establishment, and a place looks like it's packed. How do you determine whether they are over the occupancy or not? I mean, it's hard to count every single person and everything, so.
It is. So right now, we currently have a list of all the facilities that we go to, and we know what their maximum occupant loads are allowed per code.
Right.
We've gone through, pulled it up out of their permits to verify that those numbers are correct, and that's what we hold them to. So currently, right now, what we do is we'll go through and do our sweeps 2 to 3 times a night, and we physically go in and count all the patrons. There's several of us that go in. I always have a counterpart with me in fire. We have building and safety, one of theirs, and then we always have some of the deputies with us as well. We'll go through in the areas that are super crowded, and we can see it right off the bat. We will kind of hold areas in place so we can get an accurate count. We do have our repeat offenders that we go through all the time that'll stay right at the limit. The rule is if you're at max occupancy and they have a line, it's 1 in, 1 out. I will say that this past weekend, we did shut a facility down. So we have the authority to do that out of the fire code. There's 3 different sections that allows us as the fire code official and the fire chief and fire marshal for the jurisdiction to be able to close a facility for overcrowding and unsafe conditions.
Okay.
And when we feel that it's unsafe, we will close the operation.
Okay.
It's a life safety issue.
Okay, thank you. Last question is, do we allow pyrotechnics? And if we do, how do we license it or give permission to do it?
Right now, none of the business owners here that we deal with have the permits for pyrotechnics. If they are going to do any of that, they have to come in and pull a permit. They have to show the proper licenses, and their staff, whoever's going to be doing it, has to have already gone through the state fire marshal training for it.
Okay.
There were a couple facilities that were doing pyrotechnics with alcoholic bottles. Soon as we came across it, it came to a stop. It hasn't happened since.
Good, okay.
So as of right now, nothing's going on.
All right, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say to each of your respective agencies, thank you for everybody that goes out. For those that have never gone in and told someone who's been drinking and entertaining themselves all night that they have to close it down, it's not fun. So we appreciate that, and it's a very tough job for all of you, so thank you for doing that. We appreciate that. Okay, we have enough questions? We still have one more?
No, yeah, just a couple of comments, and I appreciate everything. And Vice Chair Truly-Trejo, you actually said a couple, safety, evolve. I mean, I think that's all extremely important for us here. I do think there's some evolution. I mean, you talked about coming to college town, and, I think there's times where there are family outings, and there's time for, I think you said it best, adult entertainment or something kind of different, and trying to keep that balance and safe for everybody. Knowing that this is, for lack of a better description, a living document and stuff can be changed, I think that's there as well. I wish there was something, and it doesn't sound like we can, but if part of the intent is to make things more streamlined, specifically in Old Town, I wish there was something else that we could do, because I don't know how much this particular ordinance is going to impact Old Town today. I think it could have a tremendous impact as, say, Uptown gets developed and other things get moved around, and it's important to establish that. So I don't know. I'm sure you guys have crossed bridges and put the thinking hats on, but if, you know, I can understand for the deputy to say how difficult it would be to not know which business is able to close at a certain time, and I mean, that's definitely challenging. Something like this would make that easier. I don't see it having a huge impact for us right now, but maybe keep those wheels spinning on that. Your point about even the coffee house hours kind of thing did trigger a little bit for college students, kind of, you know, more hanging out type of a deal. So I'm still not 100% sold on the time, but I mean, I think if it's something that we kind of sit here and kind of watch and see what the needs are for some of that, you know, and, you know, like some of the hypotheticals I threw out maybe aren't pertinent or maybe applicable today, but if it's something that we know that we can come back and revisit and make sure we've got that community feedback. It seems like the outreach is really well. That was the only question I didn't really get to ask earlier, was what was the feedback from like chamber and business community. But I think we've always done a really good job of getting the outreach out to the community, and I think as long as they understand that when, you know, if this goes all the way through city council, ears are open, and if we're hearing that things need to be adjusted or amended, that, you know, we're open to that process. Thank you.
Just occurred to me, I wanted to ask you one other thing, and I probably shouldn't, but I will. This does not apply to anybody who is performing as a street performer. Would that be correct to say? Say someone on the street corner with a guitar and a case open and asking for money?
No, it would not.
Okay, good. That's a completely separate deal and First Amendment rights and all that stuff, right? So we don't even want, okay, very good. Just want to make sure, They're not serving alcohol. They could.
Well, the class types are defined as entertainment establishment types, so.
But as you well know, the state has done many things to help loosen up some things, like specifically on sidewalk vendors.
Yeah.
So
Street performers haven't come yet.
All right.
But sidewalk vendors, yes.
Yeah.
Street performers, not yet.
And I know we had to deal with the vendors too on the sidewalks. So I mean, we laugh about it, but those things come up. So, all right. Any other discussion or questions? I think you had a condition or something that we wanted to include in the motion. Was that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that would just be, and I mean, if it's necessary this time, I don't know. The idea of removing that phrase from class 1 and dancing, if that opened up for anything particular, you know, I'd be happy to see that, but I don't, if it's necessary or not at this point, I'll leave that open. But it was just a good point. It's, the way it is read right now, anybody that wants to do any type of dancing is automatically class 3.
Yeah. So I think if you were to make a motion with that idea in it, it would be to direct us to go back and reevaluate that specific concern and see if there's any way that we could make a change to address that question that you had. So, I mean, that's probably as far as we could go, because I don't know if we can. So, I mean, we could, but I don't know if that's what we'll end up doing. You know, so it would be to direct us to go back and do everything we can to address your question.
I think it would be, we would not want to allow a business to say, everything we're doing is lessons and get around the whole thing.
Right.
So I understand that it's a really, really super fine line.
Yeah.
And I've heard of businesses who have said, everything we do is to teach, therefore it doesn't apply to us. And I know of people that will find ways around things like that. So it is a really fine line, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it even during the pandemic when you could stay open with certain foods and the lines that they crossed over there. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's even any businesses that would be applying for class 1 with dancing or anything under that nature. It was just a thought that came up that it was the only thing that really automatically pushed you to the top. So,
And just so everybody knows, this isn't Footloose. We're not we're not anti-dancing.
oh, no, it's not fun.
It's just about finding the fine line between the differences. So it's very hard. Dancing seemed to be a trigger, and the hours of operation that was also very difficult. So I really appreciate the feedback, and we're certainly going to go back and look at both of those things and see if we can't come up with something that is better.
Well, I would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance that we have tonight.
Without any, okay. There's a motion, and do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Egel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Looks like that's a 5-0 vote. Thank you for your participation tonight. We appreciate that. Okay, our next item on the agenda is commissioner reports. I'll start on my left this time, and do you have anything from my two esteemed gentlemen over here? My other two colleagues?
We did have a QLMP virtual meeting, and I think it was pretty well-attended and successful. And we have another meeting on February 17th, hopefully in person. So I will report back on that one.
Thank you, Lene, and once again, thank you for representing the Planning Commission on that effort. I know that that takes up a lot of time and thought, so we appreciate that. I'm not aware of any subcommittee meetings. Was there any that, okay, we'll move on then. Community Development Director report?
Yes, so
Watson?
you guys all got your piece of history. I hope it displays prominently in your office or somewhere in your home. So there's that. And then I just want to honestly say thank you for the conversation tonight. I know we come before you guys a lot of times. A lot of missionary work has been done with subcommittees. Things are vetted. A lot of things are more cut and dry. The answers are easily discerned. This one was hard. This one was much harder. So the questions, the comments, we really appreciate that. Keep those coming. And like I said, this one was not straightforward. Is not straightforward. I would imagine that there's going to be a change or two here or there as we move forward and learn how this thing rolls out. The good news is we're using the best practices that we've seen in other cities that have been doing this for a long time. So we're not like, revolutionary here. So that's comforting. And I know it's comforting to the attorney as well. So anyways, I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it, and that's going to make our ordinance better.
Thank you, Luke. Mr. Moreno?
Just two events that are coming before we meet again. Number one, this Saturday at 10 a.m. is the grand opening of our new pump track at Long Valley Park. And then the following Saturday, on the 12th, is the grand opening of the Somers Bend Sports Park. And so we'll be accepting that park, and there's going to be a big to-do about that, games, all kinds of things going on. Both events are at 10 a.m. So this Saturday and then the next Saturday.
And this Saturday's the pump track?
This Saturday's the pump track.
Are they working 24 hours to?
Yeah. This Saturday's the pump track, and should be a nice ribbon cutting there too. And then Saturday the 12th will be the sports park.
I know they were hard at work today, so.
Yeah, they're wrapping it up.
We got a ways to go. So.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing real quick, just sorry to butt in. The next city council meeting, or city council, planning commission is actually canceled. The item we had has been, the applicant pulled it. So I just wanted to make that note because it says we're adjourning to the February 16th meeting, but we will not be.
It will be March the 2nd, correct?
That's correct.
I love March and February because the days are always the same. So. Okay, I don't see anything else pending, so I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting to our regularly scheduled meeting of March 2nd, 2022. Thanks. Good job with the commission.